plane. Radar is there to prevent private planes which have no transponders from hitting commercial ones, among other things. And if radar can see a private plane that has no transponder, it certainly can see a huge jumbo jet. So you can take the transponder lies and trash them, but the plane did disappear from civilian radar even though military radar tracked it for and now admitted for hour longer. Only an AWACS type system could do this. Watch this video. http youtube.best1s and E5S or sad name Google AdSense 468 x 60 banner blue. What is ELECRO? Magnetic pulse EMP weapon. An electromagnetic pulse EMP, also sometimes called a transient electromagnetic disturbance, is a short burst of electromagnetic energy. Such a pulse may occur in the form of a radiated electric or magnetic field, a conducted electrical current depending on the source, and may be natural or man-made. The term electromagnetic pulse is commonly abbreviated to EMP. EMP interference is generally damaging to electronic equipment, and at higher energy levels a powerful EMP event such as a lightning strike can damage physical objects such as buildings and aircraft structures. The damaging effects of high-energy EMP have been used to create EMP weapons. These are typically divided into nuclear and non-nuclear devices. Source httpn.wikipedia.org Wiki electromagnetic_pulse. Some smaller devices could easily be made by terrorists. In fact, a simple search of the internet yields plans and specifications for constructing small EMP devices from readily available components such as the megatrons from industrial microwave ovens, rated at 800 to 1200 watts, and several batteries. These devices are said to be able to disable the electronics of a modern car or airplane within 200 meters. EMP generators can produce pulses of electromagnetic energy that can destroy the sensitive electronics in computers and microprocessors. Read more. Greater than EMP weapons can cause the destruction of electronic control systems critical to the operation of many ground vehicles and aircraft. Questions to answer. Here are some questions which should be asked and not shot down by those who have a hidden agenda. That such queries amount to conspiracy theories. Far from being conspiracy theories, we assert that the questions below and the rationale for asking them are well-founded and must be addressed by the relevant parties, failing which an inference ought to be drawn that they are complicit in the disappearance of MH370. Was the plane ordered to turn back? If so, who gave the order? Was the plane turned back manually or by remote control? If the latter, which country or countries have the technologies to execute such an operation? Was Beijing, China the target, and if so, why? No questions were asked whether the flight path of MH370, if as alleged it crashed in the Indian Ocean, was within the geographical parameters of the intelligence capabilities of Diego Garcia. Why were no planes deployed from Diego Garcia to intercept the unidentified plane, which obviously would pose a threat to the Diego Garcia military base? Why on March 7 Diego Garcia announced no flying for 72 hours? Why on March 31 Diego Garcia military base requested one dry cargo vessel in support of operations between Singapore and Diego Garcia? https www.fbo.gov opportunity mode format 56E1 ASCII BC 89 CC09 A2166887A1406A5 tab core_C viewer. Watch copy of this request here. https www.youtube.com watch COADOAQ. Alternative theory was MH370 simply destroyed on its original path to Beijing. This website is tracking planes right now. Historical data for MH370 is missing from that site. http www.flightradar24.com data flights 360316F90. The case of Malaysia's missing airliner MH370. Perhaps the most unsettling information in regards to the missing Boeing 777 comes from retired 35-year Delta pilot, Field McConnell, who states that since 1995, Boeing uninterruptible autopilots have been equipped in Boeing planes. This information was apparently not released until March of 2007, following a subsequent lawsuit by McConnell. The modification was reported to the FAA, NTSB and ALPA Airline Pilots Association. According to McConnell's documents, Boeing is said to have stated that by end of 2009 all Boeing planes would be fitted with a BUAP, making them impossible to manually hijack within the plane but susceptible to remote control by the military. According to flight veteran, Pigeon inside view of a Boeing 777 cockpit. Marine Links CNN 370 UFly storyboard to Serco, Abbott and the Mi3 Red Switch sham. http www.abeldanger.net 2014041928 submarine link shan370ufly.html http youtube.bs Koik Malaysian Air Flight 370, Diego Garcia, and the Illuminati. Note the following content comes from the Illuminati watchdog site. Within days of the disappearance of Malaysian Airlines Flight 370, people realized that finding the aircraft and its passengers was becoming more and more unlikely. What started out as a routine flight to Beijing has since turned into a sea and air search that has swept across the Indian Ocean. Of course, the mystery has brought us numerous conspiracy theories ranging from terrorist hijackers to a lost scenario. However, none of these were really credible and were quickly dismissed, although there was one exception. It's the story of IBM employee Philip Wood and that strange photo and audio text traced to the tiny island of Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean. This theory isn't so much a theory as it is a leak. To those still learning about what is happening, Diego Garcia is an atoll used as a military base by the US and UK. Its purpose is highly classified, and both governments are being very quiet about how it may have been used during this crisis. According to the reports we will provide a link below, Wood sent a blacked-out photo and a message saying that he was alive, had been imprisoned, and was under the influence of drugs. Aside from those, there were no other details. Once the message had been received, it was traced back to the island. Many more oddities surround this supposed air disaster, such as the Malaysian government telling all of the families of the missing passengers and crew that their loved ones were dead. Why would a government do this unless it had something conclusive to show them? The Illuminati likely forced the officials to give this message in order to proceed with its cover-up. Until the leak of the Wood message, the story was beginning to lose steam, and people were willing to accept that it might never be solved, as in the case of Amelia Earhart. But the leak changed all of that. Within a day or two, search ships detected pings from a black box and more debris was discovered. The timing was too convenient and the probable result of diverting attention away from Wood. Now, the Illuminati has a major problem on its hands. It must fabricate an air disaster and gather enough wreckage to convince people that the plane went down. Whatever is on the black box will not likely offer much insight into the events. To craft a better narrative, the secret order would have needed more time. As for the passengers, who knows what will become of them? Another question is what will happen to the Boeing 777 that is probably sitting on a military tarmac. Does the Illuminati plan to use it in one of its doomsday events? That's the real problem with the disappearance of Flight 370. There are just too many questions about why the Illuminati did this. What we here at IW Illuminati Watchdog think is that this was just a preliminary event done in preparation for a larger one. Unlike some of the other Illuminati disasters, mistakes have been made. That indicates inadequate planning as well as limited resources to complete the job. We also think that the operation only utilized a smaller cell and not the organization as a whole. This could also be linked to the event that the Apple iPhone clock icon predicts on October 15, year unknown. If the Wood message is truly authentic, what we know is that the Illuminati controls a jumbo jet that technically no longer exists. We also know that the Order has over 200 captives that are officially dead. All of this indicates that the NWO is preparing for something far worse in the future. It could happen several months or even several years from now. Just be sure to remember all of the smaller events and warnings to connect the dots to whatever major lays ahead. Source http illuminatiwatchdog.blogspot.car 201404 Malaysian Air Flight 370 Diego Garcia.html. For more on this story, check out the following links. A passenger Philip Wood and others still alive after Flight 370 was hijacked and taken to a secret U.S. military base located on a remote island in the Indian Ocean. http beforeitsnews.com Conspiracy Theories 201404 At preponderance of evidence Flight 370 IC Diego Garcia 2461384.html. On March 24, 2014 at 2:30 a.m. EDT, it was reported by IntelliHub News that Flight 370 landed at Diego Garcia, a secret U.S. military base leased from the EU, during the early morning hours of March 8, 2014 after a YouTuber by the name of Montagraph put two on two together following other reports. An excerpt from the article reads, MH370 most likely landed at Diego Garcia and the plane may have been ushered into a massive Faraday cage-style hangar to avoid passengers from communicating with the outside world. Surprisingly, this all dovetails with a Malaysian insider report released on March 18 titled U.S. Military Base, South Asian Airports in MH370 Pilot Simulator, says paper, as the pilot of MH370 was found to have had scale simulations of Diego Garcia in his home flight simulator. And except from the Malaysian insider reads investigations into the flight simulator taken from the missing pilot's home showed a software for 5 practice runways, including one belonging to the United States, Berita Harian reported today. Flight in MH370 residents on remote island in Maldives saw low-flying jet matching missing Malaysia Airlines plane's description. Residents on a remote island in Maldives claim they saw a low-flying jumbo jet matching the description of the missing Malaysia Airlines plane in the hours after it disappeared. Image from http www.ibtimes.com. Malaysia Airlines flight spotted Maldives examining latest theory 3701562221. Several residents of Kuta Huvadhu, in Darlu Atoll, said they saw a white aircraft with red stripes flying so low over the island the plane's doors were clearly visible. Islanders claim they were disturbed by an incredibly loud noise at about 6:15 a.m. local time on March 8 and saw a plane traveling from north to southeast, towards Adu, the southern tip of Maldives, it is reported. The alleged sighting, around 2,000 miles away from Kuala Lumpur, came hours after Beijing-bound flight MH370 vanished on the same day with 239 people on board. Investigators now believe it was deliberately steered off course after it took off from the Malaysian capital. One witness told Havia Online, "I've never seen a jet flying so low over our island before. We've seen seaplanes, but I'm sure that this was not one of those. I could even make out the doors on the plane clearly. It's not just me either." Several other residents have reported seeing the exact same thing. Some people got out of their houses to see what was causing the tremendous noise too. The last ping signal from the aircraft was detected by a satellite in an area near a U.S. naval base on Diego Garcia and Maldives. Havia Online has also quoted a local aviation expert as saying the plane spotted above Maldives is likely to be missing MH370, as instances of any aircraft flying over the island at the reported time was rare. A total of 26 countries are helping to search for the missing plane, but Maldives is not one of them. Source: greater than flight MH370 Maldives airport could be suitable for landing. PS1 Delta Force. The Illuminators crack troops. Note the following content comes from the Illuminati watchdog site. Whenever we think of military heroes, teams such as the Navy SEALs, Air Force Special Ops, and the Army Rangers come to mind. Each of these divisions boasts elite troops and are pop culture icons, but there is one such team that is much more than highly trained soldiers: Delta Force. This division of the Army serves as the Illuminators' special troops who are trained to do the Secret Order's dirty work across the world. Officially, Delta Force is an anti-terrorist special ops team, and little is known about it. The Pentagon ensures that most of the information remains classified, while simultaneously manipulating the public's perceptions through propaganda. Hollywood has done a fabulous job of promoting Delta Force as a heroic group of elite soldiers. Films such as Black Hawk Down and the Delta Force series have done wonders to create a dazzling public image. Indeed, whenever people think of Delta Force, images of Eric Bana and Chuck Norris saving the day come to mind. This is exactly how the brainwashing works. By glorifying the division in film, average Americans will believe that Delta Force is heroism incarnate and that anyone who slights it is unpatriotic. Well, we here at IW are about to be unpatriotic. In reality, Delta Force operates outside of normal Army regulations. The unit has no official uniform, and its soldiers frequently work in civilian clothes. Hairstyles also fit this pattern. Unlike other Army personnel who sport the traditional buzz cut, Delta Force troops can wear their hair however they want. This allows them to function in secret, and they can operate anywhere including American soil. Not exactly what we see from Chuck Norris, is it? What scares us the most is the division's ability to work on U.S. soil and not be identified. This means that the president or other higher-ups in the executive branch can order the team to do whatever dirty work that needs to be done, keep the operations classified, and avoid any issues with the courts. Using the FBI or other law enforcement agencies would require full disclosure and present legal challenges, all of which would make a cover-up more difficult. By utilizing an elite force, the executive branch can do whatever it pleases, and who is it that controls this branch? Whenever the Illuminati have needed to manipulate the military operation for its own aims, it has called on Delta Force. At the Battle of Tora Bora in 2001, the unit was used to ensure that Osama bin Laden escaped and that the war on terror could continue. Had the al-Qaeda leader been apprehended, the Illuminati would not have been able to take away our civil liberties so easily. Delta Force was also involved in the Somali Civil War in 1993. Its failure during the Mogadishu raid convinced America to withdraw its forces and remain isolated from future African conflicts. Within a year, the Rwandan genocide occurred. Was it a coincidence that the US used Mogadishu as a basis for not getting involved? Also, let's not forget the Illuminati symbolism used by Delta Force. For starters, the name itself is a blatant reference to the secret order because Delta is synonymous of triangle. The team could just as easily be called Triangle Force. There really is no difference. More symbolism is apparent in some of the unit's logos. These, of course, are triangles, but there is something else to consider. When you turn the triangle onto another side, it looks like a 6. These overt references are just more examples of how the Illuminati hide in plain sight. Before judging us as unpatriotic, please consider that we are not speaking about the perception of Delta Force. Obviously, bashing the heroic efforts of soldiers is not supporting America. No, what we are discussing is a secret force of crack troops that can operate outside of military regulations and can even operate on US soil. This is not what Hollywood has depicted, nor will it ever depict. Between the information that's available and the blatant symbolism, we have concluded that Delta Force serves the Illuminati. Source: http illuminatiwatchdog.blogspot.com 201404 Delta Force Illuminator Scrap Troops.html Author: Look, the Pentagon's new generation of secret military bases PS2 back to the Stone Age. In 1 nanosecond, EMP weapons in many ways are more dangerous than nuclear weapons. Look around you. Right now you are using a computer. You probably also depend on a cell phone and, most likely, you have a car to get you from home to work it to the market. Most vulnerable to this high current of EMP are transistors, those small devices that are inside computer chips, radios, cell phones, ATM machines, automotive ignition systems, the gas pumps, calculators, lights, clocks, and just about everything that requires batteries. All of these would be useless after an EMP, and repairing them would not be an option. They would all have to be trashed and replaced. An EMP lasts just 1 nanosecond, irradiates at 50 kVm at the speed of light. At such a high altitude, it could happen in the blink of an eye and might not be immediately associated with any type of explosion or blast. Imagine surviving an EMP only to find you cannot call your family to see if they're safe, cannot get cash from your ATM or bank since they cannot access your records, cannot buy food at a supermarket, no scanners, or even drive your car, ignition destroyed. Everything relying on modern electrical technology will be useless. When you finally walk to your home, city water will not be pumped, lights will not come on, sewage treatment will be offline, heat and air conditioning will be gone, and the production, harvesting and transport of food will have come to a grinding halt. What's even worse is that the lack of radio and television use will keep most people from understanding what has happened or how to respond. Confusion and eventually anarchy would reign. This is the reality of an EMP weapon. Source: http www.viewzone.com.html Just one is all it takes. This threat is not imaginary. The House Armed Services Committee issued its warning to Congress on July 10, 2008, citing the fact that the Russians have already tested small-yield EMP weapons of 300 kilotons at altitudes of 60, 150 and 300 kilometers and produced the effects described above at distances up to 600 kilometers from the test site. An actual weapon would be many times stronger. Areas of medium-yield EMP destruction with a single burst over Kansas at 100, 300 and 500 kilometers. The scientists describe 3 possible EMP effects, depending on the height of the detonation. Because the gamma rays travel in a line-of-sight path, the most dramatic effect comes from a high-altitude blast. Here, the gamma rays can travel further and the Earth's magnetic field deflects the pulse back to the surface. Such an attack could easily be launched from a submarine, just off the coast, and need not be accurate. The altitude and coordinates of detonation can vary widely and the effects will be just as lethal to the electronics. If several are launched, the chances of one reaching its optimum height is almost guaranteed. Once the EMP has been discharged, the circuitry of subsequent missile electronics will be useless, leaving the victims vulnerable to more attacks. The House Armed Services Committee confirmed that these weapons do not need to be accurately targeted to destroy our infrastructure. A medium-sized nuke, detonated from between 150 and 500 miles anywhere over Kansas, would be enough to destroy 100 years of technological development. By comparison, the Space Shuttle and Space Station orbit about 110 to 150 miles above Earth, well below the optimal detonation of a potential EMP weapon. An orbiting nuke could possibly already be poised, waiting to be used in a future conflict. If such a weapon is already up there, it is completely beyond our current capability to destroy it. Once it is detonated, our remaining electronic defense systems would be relatively useless. Checkmate. The U.S. society and economy are so critically dependent upon the availability of electricity that a significant collapse of the grid, precipitated by a major natural or man-made EMP event, could result in catastrophic civilian casualties. This vulnerability, if left unaddressed, could have grave, societal-altering consequences for EP. Trent Franks, who authored the SHIELD Act. The Commission's 2004 report discussed at length the disabling consequences of an EMP threat to our electrical power, telecommunications, banking and finance, energy, transportation, food, and water supply infrastructures. Given America's reliance on critical and technological infrastructure, it is often difficult to imagine the scope of how our lives would be seriously altered and how our security and safety would be jeopardized if such systems were knocked out. But it is that very reliance, and our potential adversaries' determination to focus on our perceived Achilles heel, that we must imagine, discuss, and plan for those possibilities. Source greater than non-nuclear electromagnetic pulse. NEMP is a weapon-generated electromagnetic pulse without use of nuclear technology. Devices that can achieve this objective include a large low-inductance capacitor bank discharged into a single-loop antenna, a microwave generator and an explosively pumped flux compression generator. To achieve the frequency characteristics of the pulse needed for optimal coupling into the target, wave-shaping circuits and/or microwave generators are added between the pulse source and the antenna. Vercators are vacuum tubes that are particularly suitable for microwave conversion of high-energy pulses. NEMP generators can be carried as a payload of bombs, cruise missiles such as the Champ missile and drones, with diminished mechanical, thermal and ionizing radiation effects, but without the political consequences of deploying nuclear weapons. The range of NEMP weapons, non-nuclear electromagnetic pulse bombs, is much less than nuclear EMP. Nearly all NEMP devices used as weapons require chemical explosives as their initial energy source, producing only 106/1,000,000th the energy of nuclear explosives of similar weight. The electromagnetic pulse from NEMP weapons must come from within the weapon, while nuclear weapons generate EMP as a secondary effect. These facts limit the range of NEMP weapons, but allow finer target discrimination. The effect of smaller bombs has proven to be sufficient for certain terrorist or military operations. Examples of such operations include the destruction of electronic control systems critical to the operation of many ground vehicles and aircraft. The concept of the explosively pumped flux compression generator for generating a non-nuclear electromagnetic pulse was conceived as early as 1951 by Andrei Sakharov in the Soviet Union, but nations kept work on non-nuclear EMP classified until similar ideas emerge in other nations. PS3 The likely motive. A tiny microchip was the likely motive for Pentagon hijack of MH370. According to one report, the owners of a valuable patent were aboard MA370. If they died, the patent would belong to the company, Freescale Semiconductor, which is owned by Jacob Rothschild, by Alan Kunde, Henry Makeoff.com. One group of passengers included 12 Malaysians and 8 Chinese, all from the same company, Freescale Semiconductor. In my experience, this defies all company policies. You don't put all your eggs in basket. Generally, travel groups are split up to reduce business risk. This company is called Freescale Semiconductor and is based out of Austin, Texas, with manufacturing and design facilities in the Far East. Their products and services are across the board of applications from automotive, medical, military, etc. They now produce the world's smallest microcontroller at a size of 4 square millimeters using integrated circuitry, which includes RAID-on access memory RAM, read-only memory ROM and a high-frequency counter clock. This product, known as Kinesis KLO2, uses adaptive learning and correcting and is useful for drones that are smaller than a fly, micro-submarines and micro-satellites. The technology is dual-use, so it can have the best of both markets: high-volume, low-cost, and high-tech, low-volume, giving it commercial access to automotive, medical, robotic, etc., as well as high-tech military applications. Military benefits of this technology include, but not limited to, radar jamming, target modification, RF power, missile guidance, identification, friend or foe, IFF, electronic countermeasure, cloaking for radar, visual disappearance. The U.S. technological company, Freescale Semiconductor, who shared its rights with Rothschild, had 20 senior members on board who had just launched a new electronic warfare gadget for military radar systems the day before the plane went missing. The semiconductor company develops microprocessors, sensors, and other technology including standalone semiconductors that perform dedicated computing functions. But the questions that arise are: why were there so many Freescale employees traveling together? What were their jobs, their mission, and did the employees carry valuable cargo with all the power our elite carry? Why couldn't they track down the missing plane? Furthermore, it owns Freescale RF, which is involved in making solutions for aerospace and defense, including battlefield communications, avionics, HF radars, band L&S, missile guidance, electronic warfare, and identification, IFF. But here's where it gets even more interesting. The Freescale shareholders include the Carlyle Group, whose past advisors have included ex-President George Bush Sr. and former British Prime Minister John Major. Some of the company's previous clients include the construction firm owned by the family of Osama bin Laden, the Saudi Bin Laden Group. The company Freescale did not respond to questions from Express Online, including whether any of its missing employees had been working on the defense products. It neither provided any responses to the latest bizarre conspiracy theory being widely published on the comments sections of newspaper websites and other internet forums. The comment reads, have you pieced together the puzzle of missing Flight 370 to Beijing, China? If not, here are your missing pieces. 4 days after the flight MH370 disappear, semiconductor patent was approved by the U.S. Patent Office. Patent is divided in parts of 20% between 5 starters. One of the owners is the company itself, Freescale Semiconductor, Austin, Texas, USA, and the other 4 Chinese employees of the company, Pidong Wang, Jijin Chen, Cheng and Li Ying Jizhong, all the Suzhou City. And they all passengers of Malaysia Airlines plane disappeared on March 8, according Eternity. It adds, here is your motive for the missing Beijing plane. As all 4 Chinese members of the patent were passengers on the missing plane. Patent holders can alter the proceeds legally by passing wealth to their heirs. However, they cannot do so until the patent is approved. So when the plane went missing, the patent had not been approved. Although a Freescale patent exists under number US 8,650,327, none of the names listed actually appear on the passenger manifest released by the Malaysian authorities. If the patent holder dies, the other owners share equally in dividends from the deceased. If 4 of the 5 patentees die, then the patentee left alive gets 100% of the patent. That remaining patent holder is the company Freescale Semiconductor. Who owns Freescale Semiconductor? The answer is Jacob Rothschild. British billionaire owns the company Blackstone, which in turn owns the company Freescale Semiconductors. Several speculations on the internet now pay attention to this circumstance. The Rothschilds are a dynasty of financiers and international bankers of German Jewish origin. The family is from the 19th century, one of the most influential families of bankers and financiers of Europe. To see patent up close, http truthnewsinternational.files.w. Is this just another coincidence? I don't think so. Rothschild is hiding evidence to gain the rights to this semiconductor. He wants power and he wants his money. It may have taken 239 deaths to do it, but to him, that's just part of population control. In the end, he gets him money, his fame, and his power, all while the world remains silent. Makes you sick, doesn't it? Time to expose this fraud for who he is linked to before it's news.com. Politics 201, Freescale Semiconductor patent, http truthnewsinternational.files.wordpress.com 201403S00867138one. PDF. In 2007, the Syrian military experienced the use of this technology. Israeli planes were spotted on the country's air defense radar. At first, it appeared that no jets were in the sky. Then, in an instant, it made the radar believe there were hundreds of planes. The flight path of MH370 was headed NNW to China over Vietnam, but the plane vanished when the transponder was turned off. The Malaysian military reported the plane was directed west across the Malacca Strait. Is it possible that it was taken down or hijacked? Some people in the Maldives reported hearing a low-flying jet making a noise like a loud fan. Also, the Malaysian Prime Minister has been quoted saying there was no mechanical error and their focus is now on the passengers and crew. This technology could have been used on this very plane. Looking at this situation, we have Western military technology being designed in a Muslim country with ties to China and Russia, who are often at odds with US foreign policy. Apparently, there is a sister plane made by Boeing on the tarmac in Tel Aviv. The theory is that the Israelis would claim the Iranians hijacked it, loaded it with explosives and used it for a false flag attack on the US. Apparently Jacob Rothschild is the owner of Freescale Semiconductors. The ownership of the patent would be solely owned by Rothschild if 4 other owners who were on the plane are deceased. If the patent holder dies, the other owners share equally in dividends from the deceased. If 4 of the 5 patentees die, then the patentee left alive gets 100% of the patent. That remaining patent holder is the company Freescale Semiconductor. Who owns Freescale Semiconductor? The answer is Jacob Rothschild. British billionaire owns the company Blackstone, which in turn owns the company Freescale Semiconductors. Several speculations on the internet now pay attention to this circumstance. This seems the most plausible explanation for the disappearance of MA-370. The world's militaries and intelligence agencies are chore boys for the Rothschilds. The plane was probably flown to Diego Garcia where the passengers were liquidated. See more at PS4. Chinese theory on MH370. Malaysia Airlines was hijacked, and the hijackers made demands to the government of Malaysia relating to domestic politics. After 5 hours of negotiations, they could not come to an agreement and the hijackers, having failed to get their way, ran out of fuel. The Malaysian government has known where the aircraft has been all along. After realizing that the plane ran out of fuel, they decided to label the incident as a crash due to technical aircraft failure to avoid other political forces governments from knowing the hijackers' political aspirations. Why a Malaysian plane airline? Because the motivation of the hijackers was related to Malaysia's domestic politics. Who are the hijackers' crew? What are the demands of the hijackers? To ask the government to immediately release political prisoner opposition leader Anwar and overturn the March 7 verdict which saw him sentenced for sodomy. Many of Anwar's supporters believe that the verdict was politically fueled and meant to ruin Anwar's political career. If the government promised to release Anwar, then the hijackers would ensure the safety of aircraft return to a landing at the airport in Malaysia, otherwise it will destroy the aircraft. Why did hijackers close communication links with the ground navigation? Because the hijackers are naive enough to think the Malaysian administration will be concerned with more than 230 lives and agree to their terms. The hijackers assumed they would have been successful and would have returned alive, so after the hijacking of the aircraft, navigation and communication were shut down and negotiations started with Malaysia Airlines headquarters intercom equipment. Why did the hijackers keep flying? Because they had been waiting for the Malaysian administration's response. Why did Malaysia announce the aircraft lost contact 5 hours after the last contact? Because the government and the hijackers were bargaining, a time in which communication between the government and the hijackers had been smooth, and the administration also hoped to persuade the hijackers to abandon hijacking. Therefore, the government cannot release information. That is why the aircraft was cruising for so long. They were waiting for the government's reply. The main demands of the hijackers relates to Malaysia's domestic political matter. There was no need to fly to other countries. Moreover, the hijackers hoped that the government would accept the conditions, and that they would return alive. But finally fuel ran out. When the Malaysian government confirmed the plane ran out of fuel, they set a strategy to conceal the truth, announced the plane lost contact information, then misled the international community, creating the illusion of effort but could not find the aircraft. Why did the Malaysian government lie? Because if the public knew the hijackers' political demands, a major political issue arises. And if the international community knew what the hijackers asked for and the Malaysian government refused to meet demands, Malaysia will discredit it. However, the United States has to know the truth. Malaysia is putting on a show to display governments working together and exerting effort in the search to find the wreckage and compensate families. But Boeing does not want to take the blame of producing faulty aircraft, hence why they too agree with the evidence that the plane flew another 5 hours after losing contact. In the face of irrefutable evidence, the government was forced to admit that hijacking was the cause rather than technical failure. In fact, the United States knows the whole truth, but selectively releases information to blackmail Malaysia into gaining political interests. Politics is pathetic, treating human life as dirt. Believe it or not. http www.reddit.com Conspiracy Comments 21 F6 Chinese _theory _on _MH370 mystery PS5 and another conspiracy theory. It goes like this: America is withdrawing from Afghanistan. One of their command and control system used for controlling the pilotless drones was hijacked by Talibans when the American transport convoy was moving down from one of the hilltop bases. The Talibans ambushed the convoy and killed 2 American SEAL personnel, seized the equipment, weapons, including the command and control system, which weighed about 20 tons and packed into 6 crates. This happened about a month ago in February 2014. The Talibans want money. They want to sell the system to Russia or China. The Russians are too busy in Ukraine. The Chinese are hungry for the system's technology. Just imagine if the Chinese master the technology behind the command and control system, all the American drones will become useless. So the Chinese sent 8 top defense scientists to check the system and agreed to pay millions for it. Sometime in early March 2014, the 8 scientists and the 6 crates made their way to Malaysia, thinking that it was the best covert way to avoid detection. The cargo was then kept in the embassy under diplomatic protection. Meanwhile, America has engaged assistance of Israeli intelligence, and together they are determined to intercept and recapture the cargo. Chinese calculated that it will be safe to transport it via civilian aircraft so as to avoid suspicion. After all, the direct flight from KL to Beijing takes only 4.5 hours. An American will not hijack or harm civilians. So MH370 is the perfect carrier. There are 5 American and Israeli agents on board who are familiar with Boeing operation. The 2 Iranians with stolen passports could be among them. When MH370 is about to leave Malaysian airspace and reporting to Vietnamese air control, 1 American AWAC jammed their signal, disabled the pilot control system and switched over to remote control mode. That was when the plane suddenly lost altitude momentarily. How can AWAC can do it? Remember 911 incident? After the 911 incident, all Boeing aircraft and possibly all Airbus are installed with remote control system to counter terrorist hijacking. Since then, all Boeing can be remote controlled by ground control tower. The same remote control system used to control the pilotless spy aircraft and drones. The 5 American-Israeli agents took over the plane, switched off the transponder and other communication system, changed course and flew westwards. They dare not fly east to Philippines or Guam because the whole South China Sea airspace was covered by Chinese surveillance radar and satellite. The Malaysian, Thai and Indian military radars actually detected the unidentified aircraft but did not react professionally. The plane flew over North Sumatra, Anambas, South India and then landed at Maldives. Some villagers saw the aircraft's landing, refueled and continued its flight to Diego Garcia, the American air base in the middle of Indian Ocean. The cargo and the black box were removed. The passengers were silenced via natural means, lack of oxygen. They believe only dead people will not talk. The MH370 with dead passengers was airborne again via remote control and crashed into South Indian Ocean, making to believe that the plane eventually ran out of fuel and crashed, then blame the defiant captain and co-pilot. American has put on a good show. First diverting all the attention and search effort in the South China Sea while the plane made their way to Indian Ocean. Then they came out with conflicting statements and evidence to confuse the world. Australian is the co-actor. The amount of effort put up by China, in terms of the number of search aircraft, ships and satellites, searching first South China Sea, then Malacca Straits and Indian Ocean is unprecedented. This showed that China is very concerned, not so much about the many Chinese civilian passengers, but mainly the high-value cargo and its 8 top defense scientists. Don't believe the story, I don't expect you to, but let's wait and see how this all unveils. Or perhaps it will never be known until maybe the next Edward Snowden emerges. Source http www.reddit.com Conspiracy Comments 238ZM5MH370_us_VS_China Links Books Island of Shame The Secret History of the U.S. Military Base on Diego Garcia. The American military base on the island of Diego Garcia is one of the most strategically important and secretive U.S. military installations outside the United States. Located near the remote center of the Indian Ocean and accessible only by military transport, the little-known base has been instrumental in American military operations from the Cold War to the War on Terror and may house a top-secret CIA prison where terror suspects are interrogated and tortured. But Diego Garcia harbors another dirty secret, one that has been kept from most of the world until now. Island of Shame is the first major book to reveal the shocking truth of how the United States conspired with Britain to forcibly expel Diego Garcia's indigenous people, the Chagasians, and deport them to slums in Mauritius and the Seychelles, where most live in dire poverty to this day. Drawing on interviews with Washington insiders, military strategists, and exiled islanders, as well as hundreds of declassified documents, David Vine exposes the secret history of Diego Garcia. He chronicles the Chagasians' dramatic, unfolding story as they struggle to survive in exile and fight to return to their homeland. Tracing U.S. foreign policy from the Cold War to the War on Terror, Vine shows how the United States has forged a new and pervasive kind of empire that is quietly dominating the planet with hundreds of overseas military bases. Island of Shame is an unforgettable exposé of the human costs of empire and a must-read for anyone concerned about U.S. foreign policy and its consequences. The author will donate all royalties from the sale of this book to the Chagasians.